This is the first official episode outside of the season for Deep in the Stripes. This is the sickest Bengals podcast around. I'm your host, Elise Jesse. We have so much to get into today. I can't wait to talk to you guys about some of these topics and also go through. We posted the grades on the Twitter accounts and stuff. Y'all, it wasn't surprising, but y'all are so funny. We're going to read through some of those comments coming up.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse.
From 31 yards, McPherson. And Cincinnati is heading to the Super Bowl. They did it. They beat Mahomes at home. Wow, Joe Burrow. No way.
The sickest Cincinnati Bengals podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Okay, so first of all, let's get into, I'm only going to go through Zac Taylor because if somebody said gave Jamar Chase like an F grade or a C or B grade, he's a triple crown. So if anyone gave him that grade, I just assumed, I didn't even look at your profile, but I just assumed that you were probably like a Ravens fan or a Steelers fan or something. Someone who got burned by Jamar Chase in fantasy football. That is my guess. Okay, so I'm just going to go through some of the grades that y'all have given Zac Taylor. We just kind of posted, give Zac Taylor a grade from A to F. Obviously his record 9-8. They missed the playoffs for a second straight season with a healthy Joe Burrow. Oh my gosh, don't even get me started. We're not going to get into it because it's just going to piss me off. Lefty don't play, F plus. I don't know where the plus comes from. I can't read all of your names. Some of your names are a little off the grid for me. I'm not going to put that on a family show. Tim Anderson says C minus. Daniel Dubbs, C plus, B minus, rallied and kept them together. All right. I agree with that. One. Eric England says F minus. And then Ryan Hardiman says he seems like a hell of a friend to the players, just not a hard-nosed coach. I agree with that. I think he is very lenient with the players as far as he's not lenient with false starts and things like that. Like those kind of things, from my understanding, piss Zac Taylor off a lot. But as far as, he's been just kind of pegged as a coach who does a soft training camp, and he will give guys days off when traditionally a normal coach would not. And he's not one of those guys that's gonna he doesn't seem like at all like he screams in guys' faces or anything like that. Hercules Singh, I think I said that right. F. He's a bloody failure. Why? Because he is inept and incompetent. Okay. K Skin says there's like 50 Fs in this. F and then a little minus. Mark says C plus. And then Tim says, I don't know how much of the offensive success was him versus pitcher and simply having the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the NFL. I agree with that. Like, who, if you have Dan Pitcher, because Dan Pitcher was his quarterback's coach, obviously, when he first came into the league. And then now Dan Pitcher is the offensive coordinator. So when you think about the fact that Dan Pitcher, I consider Dan Pitcher to be a big part of Joe Burrow's success in the league, just because whatever he is doing to help Burrow along throughout his career has been working, in my opinion. And then Tim also elaborates, I'm tempted to say D for the winning record, but any season that results in missing the playoffs, despite having Burrow, Chase, and Hendrickson, does not get a passing grade. So we are going to go with F. And you know what? I don't think you're wrong about that at all. I do wonder that too. Like, I've wondered the same exact thing, and I gave credit to Zac Taylor. Sorry, I'm going to adjust this a little bit so we're in the middle. I gave Zac Taylor a little bit of credit during the season, towards the end of the season, and you guys were really pissed at me about that. But of course, it was the fact that he was able to keep them together and keep fighting, and you didn't see anybody giving up. Like, I feel like the way their season was going, there was so much opportunity for these guys to say, no, I'm not going to go out there and fight. Like, you have seen this time and time again in the NFL where once a team starts really having a significant losing record and it is very clear that they're going to miss the playoffs, you start to see those injury reports really pack up. It is packed with ankle injuries and quad injury and all that stuff. And you really didn't see that with the Cincinnati Bengals. So that you definitely give him credit for. Going into the defensive coordinator hire, I don't know why anybody would be worried or upset that it is taking a little while to hire somebody. One, they have to get the hire right, obviously. Zac Taylor, I think I've said this before, I think he knows better. He has a better idea of what he's looking for and what he wants in a defensive coordinator. And I think that defensive coordinator coming in would need to be a player-friendly coach, not a lenient or an easy coach, but a coach that has a reputation of developing young guys, and that the players would respect and that the players would trust to put them in the good enough positions to succeed. And I think when I describe all of those qualities in a coach, I think that's one of the reasons why you guys have probably heard the name Al Golden appear multiple times throughout multiple podcasts, probably, and especially social media. Al Golden was even asked at one point about the defensive coordinator job for the Cincinnati Bengals. And let's be honest, obviously the reporter has to ask that question because he's talking to a coach whose name is being brought up in the national spotlight as far as not head coach, but defensive coordinator searches are going. So the reporter does have to ask that question, but Al Golden can't really answer it because if he answers it, I feel like that would be a really bad look. Like you're one of the highest paid defensive coordinator for Notre Dame. You're competing for a national championship on Monday against Ohio State. That's got to be your focus. Like anything outside of that is just not part of his world right now. And he's probably leaving that. If that is even happening, it's probably all filtering to his agent. And his agent is just like, focus on what you're doing. And then we'll talk about it. He knows that he has the time. He knows that he has the leverage because he also probably knows that he is held in high regard inside Paycor Stadium. So why is he going to answer that? That would not be a good look whatsoever. He could be an option. I think that the Cincinnati Bengals, when you look at the defensive coordinator job for this specific team, you look at the other side of the ball and you see Joe Burrow, Ja'Marr Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown. You just see an efficient, potent, really entertaining, high-scoring offense. And so when you look at that as a defensive coordinator, it's like, yeah, if you believe in yourself as a coach and you believe in your ability to develop guys and put guys in the right position and really get your game plan in the minds of the players, have them buy in and just have success with that, the other side of the ball is essentially like signed, sealed, delivered. You know that Joe Burrow is going to deliver touchdowns. And so I feel like that is a job that a lot of coaches would be after. So that plays in the Bengals' hands a little bit because they can interview so many people, like so many options for the Cincinnati Bengals I guess it could be a good and a bad thing, right? So if you're zeroed in on one person, then it makes your job a little bit easier. And maybe they're interviewing 3, 4, 5, 10 guys. They like all of those dudes and they're just trying to figure out who would be the exact right fit. When you look at the Cincinnati Bengals defense, obviously this defense completely underperformed and they were charged with a lot of losses on the season. And I've heard Patrick Graham being mentioned as an option for the Cincinnati Bengals, Wink Martindale, which was a very interesting. I think Tom Pelissero came out with the Wink Martindale stuff. I find that interesting, considering the fact that Joe Burrow completely torched his defense after Wink said that. I forget what the mark was, something about a gold jacket. Like, we're not ready to put the gold jacket on yet. I find that to be interesting. Okay. Why? I don't think it would hurt the Bengals to interview him and get a feel for who Wink is and what kind of scheme, what kind of philosophy that he would bring into the building. And that's another thing. Philosophy is huge as far as the way that one coach will gel with the rest of the coaches in the building, how that fits under what Zac Taylor is looking for. Zac Taylor will depend heavily on this defensive coordinator to get these guys right. you've got a lot of options. I mean, Trey Hendrickson, one of the that led the NFL in sacks, high quality, a player who is consistent every single year, inside and out. I think Sam Hubbard, obviously, he had those surgeries in the offseason and it just kind of injured. So I didn't really feel like he was playing like himself this year, to be honest with you. You have the option to look at re-signing BJ Hill in the interior. He has just been so consistent and incredible. He has not gotten as much I don't know, like hype, but I think what he does is extremely important to this team, not only on the field, but in the locker room, because of the way that he is able to help the younger guys along and kind of explain things to them in a way that they understand it. And I think that his presence within the locker room is important. So when you think about this defense, like, yeah, a defensive coordinator coming in would probably, update the defense. Like, you don't want to completely take the defense and like reboot it completely and do a whole factory reset. You don't want to do that. You just want to come in and kind of update it, put your little tweaks in it. And I think a defensive coordinator would have the options. You also look at the draft coming up. I think that they should lean heavily towards the defensive side of the ball, because to me, the offensive side of the ball, pending re-signings, is set. So I even think at this point, at this stage in the offseason, re-signing Jamar Chase and re-signing T. Higgins are higher priorities than finding a defensive coordinator, because once you have the offensive, roster set completely and you know exactly going in what you have on offense, then you can really focus on the defense, in my opinion. And you know what? Let's talk about these re-signings for a second, because that truly, that's what I've been looking forward to the most, is seeing how this plays out. We've talked a lot this season about how Jamar Chase's price has gone up from what it was in training camp when they were working on a deal and nothing got done. And then Jamar Chase sat out of training camp and it was just kind of, the first few games were kind of clunky, and then he ends up being the Triple Crown. And, Justin Jefferson is making 35 mil. So I think that Jamar Chase needs to be above that. I do. And the Cincinnati Bengals, I would assume they know that. And for me, the Cincinnati Bengals, I would think, and this is just based on how they're covered within Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Bengals front office, the Brown family specifically, and the Blackburns are known for, or I guess the narrative surrounding them is that they don't want to win. They are cheap. And the reason why fans constantly say that is because they have watched players, talented players, leave the Cincinnati Bengals and have a lot of success elsewhere. And it's like, just pay the guy, keep him here, and you'll solve those issues. You will solve those narratives. I think that it's interesting that, I think it was Tanya O'Rourke. She's been an anchor here in Cincinnati for a very, very long time. She had an exclusive with Mike Brown's wife during the season. She was talking to Nancy Brown, and one of the interesting questions I thought was when Tanya asked Nancy, what do you think about the fans saying that Mike is cheap? And she's like, he's not cheap. And I just think that it's like, okay, like Nancy Brown seems like a very sweet woman, to be honest with you. She seems lovely and wonderful. Honestly, she and I have a lot of grandma hobbies. Okay. Like, I like to garden and bake and all that stuff. So she and I maybe have a lot of similarities in what we like to spend our free time doing. Football, maybe she's a gardener, maybe she's a baker. We would probably get along really well. I think that it's lip service to me. Sending Nancy Brown out there to talk about how her husband is not cheap, that's not going to do a whole lot. I thought the question and the answer were very interesting, but that's not going to do a whole lot to sway the fan base as far as what they think and the narrative surrounding you. Like, crush those narratives, sign Jamar Chase to a record-breaking deal, because you have the cap space to do it. I believe they have, I wrote this down, I believe they have roughly $58.7 million to work with. They do have the cap space to make these deals complete going into 2025. Sign Ja'Marr Chase to a record-breaking deal. Sign T. Higgins. And it's so funny when you talk about T. Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase, you don't even have to say anything else outside of, you just have to say Ja'Marr Chase's name, and people automatically know who you're talking about, what talent he brings. He's going to bring 17 touchdowns. He's going to bring over 1,000 yards receiving. He is a top target. He can make big plays in double coverage. And then when you talk about T. Higgins, it's like, yes, you have to, because he hasn't won the Triple Crown, because he's dealt with injuries, missing certain games and stuff, you do have to come in with more credentials behind his name that you don't have to do with Ja'Marr Chase. So for T. Higgins, it's like, he's reliable. Yes, he might miss a few games with injury, but you already know that going into the season, right? Like when you sign him, you already know that he might come with you come in with the knowledge of knowing that T. Higgins might miss 3-4 games in a season. But when he is healthy, the difference that he makes in this offense is astronomical. Your quarterback wants him on the team. Your other receivers want him on the team. Your head coach wants him on the team. Just his hands. He does not shy away from like physical contact. Like T. Higgins could be a number one receiver anywhere. And other teams who need a wide receiver are salivating at the mouth, just hoping that T. Higgins hits the open market. They are just waiting for it, hoping that the Cincinnati Bengals screw this up. So the Cincinnati Bengals make it happen. Make the deals. Get the deals done. Squash that cheap narrative. Squash the narrative that surrounds you saying you don't want to win. The lip service is not going to work. The fan base needs to see actions that support a new narrative going forward into 2025. There's a lot to be done in the offseason. I think this is one of the biggest off seasons for Joe Burrow's career. I think we're going to see some interesting cap casualties coming up in 2025. It's going to be very interesting. I think you're going to see probably a lot of new faces, and I think that might happen on the offensive line. I like Alex Kappa. I know he's gotten beaten a lot this year. I also know that, people were pissed in Cincinnati when Andrew Whitworth and Kevin Zeitler left, and Kevin Zeitler is a free agent in 2025. Give him $6 million to come back. See what he's got. You already know what Kevin Zeitler is. Bring him back. And it's like Joe Burrow is one of those players where he can evade the sack. He can use his legs and he can step up in the pocket. He can make incredible throws, and he can work around an offensive line that isn't protecting up to the standard that you are looking for. So when you consider the fact that every quarterback in the league is his best self, the best version of himself when he has protection from the offensive line, I think that we could even see Joe Burrow take a step above what he was in 2024 with a quality offensive line. You think about Trent Brown healing, Orlando Brown Jr. being fully healthy, not playing on a broken leg, Amarius Mims stepping into year 2. Typically, when you look at NFL players, their second year is much more productive in year 2 than it was in year 1. That's mainly because, in my opinion, you come from college to where not everyone in the college game is very good, to the NFL where everybody is really, really good, and you have to adjust to that, and you have to adjust to the speed. And you have to there's just a big learning curve in year 1. So I don't always expect a whole lot of production from rookies, to be honest. And so I think that it could be a really, really interesting, fun offense if everything comes together as far as, signing, bringing in quality free agents, drafting well on defense. It's going to be very interesting. There's not a whole lot of we could just jump into all of the candidates, but for me, I would expect there to be 5 times the candidates that are even being reported for the defensive coordinator job for the Cincinnati Bengals. That is a job that a coach who believes in himself and believes in his philosophy would absolutely want. And I think that that is very clear. And I think it'll be interesting to see who they hire. And I'm really excited to break that down. But first and foremost, you got to sign Chase and you got to sign T. Most important thing. So I almost like defensive coordinator, the other jobs, like that's just off. It's like sitting off to the side here. Whereas like my view right in front of me, like I'm looking at, are these deals going to get done anytime soon, sooner rather than later? I don't want to see these. I don't want to see training camp almost start. Like I don't want to enter into July and not know whether or not the Bengals can get a deal done with T. Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase. That's something I do not want to see. So I don't know about you. You let me know. A lot of you, like, you do so much research and you're so passionate about certain candidates. Let me know who your favorite candidate is in the comments and what you are prioritizing in the offseason. Your priorities might be different from mine, and I'd love to hear it. Talk with you further about that. But for right now, those are my top priorities. We can also go through, draft prospects and stuff like that down the line. But as of right now, get your top playmaker signed, find a quality defensive coordinator, and decide how you are going to give this defense a facelift. You are watching Deep in the Stripes. I'll see you next week.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.